Welcome to Blackbird episode number 98. My name is James, and I'm glad to be back on my normal streaming service. Hopefully, the audio issues that we were experiencing last week won't be here this week. I had to switch over to Zoom at the last minute last week because both the guest and I were both having internet issues, and Zoom is a little bit more reliable on that. So I've got an announcement. We're approaching episode number 100, and after episode number 100, I'm going to take a hiatus. It's going to be an indefinite hiatus. I don't have like a firm start back up date. I will probably start back up. In the meantime, just go watch old episodes. Check out the Urban Agorist episodes. They're all on YouTube, and I think they're in the same podcast audio feed. Those are some pretty good interviews. And I feel like recently this has become a libertarian podcast, and that was definitely not what I was going for when I started this thing. So I'm going to be interviewing some really interesting guests, including today's guest. They're all going to be either libertarians or post-libertarians. I'm going to focus on some side projects and then reassess the whole podcast situation. I might get back to interviewing entrepreneurs and small business owners and that sort of thing, or we might take a more cerebral kind of book study type approach, or maybe a combination of the two. What I don't want to do is get sucked into the sort of like all my guests are Mises Caucus people trap, because there are plenty of really good podcasts that already do that. And I frankly find it kind of boring if there's too many of the same thing. So I know that some of you will be upset by that. I'm a little bit sad by it, but I think when and if it comes back, it's going to be much better. So today, I am happy to be interviewing Jessi, who you probably know from Twitter, but she's into all kinds of other stuff too. So with that, why don't we just bring her in? Jessi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. So we've been following each other on Twitter for a while now. I've known you as like just kind of a funny libertarian chick. And, you know, I mean, that's sort of the brand that you built for yourself. So congratulations. There's tons of people who follow you and stuff, and you're not, you don't fall into any stereotypes or cliches, which is good. Or maybe you do, and I just don't know it. Why don't we start out with just kind of getting your bio so that people know who we're talking to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you seem to have covered the Twitter aspect of what I do very well. That's just a hobby. But what I do otherwise is I am a content producer. I'm an associate producer and an audio engineer for Emergent Order Foundation, which is a nonprofit studio that based out of Austin, Texas, and we make content to basically promote freedom.
Nice. Oh,
yep.
Sorry, I took you out of the stream instead.
No, you're good. I think there's a little bit of lag from the internet, probably on my end. But I also rep the brand No System Knows, which I am wearing right now, which is a what's the word Brian always uses? Anarcho-snarky streetwear brand. We make all kinds of cool stuff like this. That's basically what I do.
So I have a couple of No System. What is it? No System Knows?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've always just called it No System, but yeah.
No,
so I've got a couple of.
Too. We're Gnosis.
Yeah. So yeah, and gnosis makes sense. Like, I mean, it's just kind of knowledge, which is a nice little play on words for sort of a woke in the old sense of the term brand. It's sort of an anarchist, but like anarcho-capitalist, but with edge brand. And like, it's not all political stuff, which I really like. I first heard about it from Dylan Ashcraft, I think. Dylan somebody, maybe Dylan Allman. Yeah, that's who it was. It was Dylan Allman on the Pete Quinones show. He was repping it there, just sort of at the very end of an episode. So I went over there and just fell in love with it. So what do you do at No System?
Yeah, so I mean, since so the brand is run by a good friend of mine, and funny enough, also a coworker at Emergent Order Foundation, Brian, who is a just absolutely wonderful artist. So since kind of the infancy of the brand, I've just kind of been so in the target audience that I've sort of guided a few things here and there, and just been, somebody for Brian to bounce ideas off of, which has been a lot of fun. I think right now we're calling me a brand ambassador, but it's just fun, and my friends run it, and I rep it, and that's that. I don't really have
Nice.
a
Yeah,
super formal role.
I'm a little too I don't know, like almost middle-aged white dude to be a total brand ambassador. But I will tell you, when I met Michael Malice, I was wearing the Anarchy in the USA shirt with Janet Yellen, and he complimented it. So that's good.
No,
I was
it's
able to.
it's funny you would mention that because Brian and I were talking about that just the other day, but we had like half joked to each other about when Malice was coming through Emergent Order Foundation for something that we should both wear them and see if he says anything.
Oh
We
yeah, well he
didn't,
loved it.
but that's great.
What about Emergent Order? What? So that was like the Keynes Hayek rap group, right?
Yes, yeah. That is the company that produced that. So, Emergent Order was an LLC when that was produced, and Keynes versus Hayek was unfortunately before my time there. But I did see the video in high school, and that was kind of part of my beginnings of going down the economics rabbit hole. Which it's funny, to work for the brand that is the reason I believe in all of this and I'm so interested in it. It's kind of poetic in a way. But I was there for Mises versus Marx, which was an absolute blast, especially the conception phase and, getting to do all the research. I never thought I'd be reading so much Marx, but I'm glad I did. Um, but yeah, so now our primary project that I'm working on is a YouTube channel called Dad Saves America, which is basically dedicated to promoting active fatherhood and inspiring dads to view their role in society as heroic. And it's been a blast so far.
That's pretty awesome. I was wondering. I noticed on the Emergent Order webs or YouTube page that they hadn't done much in the last year. By way, well, they haven't really done like original content in a while. It's been like all podcasts and stuff. So I'll ask you for a link to the Dad Saves America thing. That's definitely a good cause. I mean, we're I don't want to get too divisive, but like we're in sort of an anti-family and particularly anti-dad era. Or do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from the early research phases, it was pretty abundantly clear that there's just so much more content out there for moms and so much more support out there for moms. And motherhood is heroic too, absolutely. But there's just definitely was a void there, and it's definitely great to be a part of filling that void.
Nice. So what has happened with Dad Saves America so far? Have y'all
Well,
like
we
started
launched
creating a
it.
lot of content?
Yeah. So it's got content up there now. We do a few chats. The one I primarily work on is the long form video podcast type content, which has been a blast. So really, we just bring people in. We talk about a variety of topics from the lens of, fatherhood, and we post that and we promote it, and people watch it, and hopefully they leave with, assets and things that they can use to improve their family life and really every facet of their lives.
Nice. Well, yeah, I definitely can get behind that. That's really cool. Now that Drew is in the chat, what's the best thing about sharks?
Oh my goodness. My favorite thing about sharks is how little they've evolved in a lot of ways. They're like a lens into history. I really enjoy any animal like that. I appreciate alligators and crocodiles for the same reason. Also, confirmed trad. I wouldn't go that far, Drew.
Do you think that cephalopods like octopus and squid are aliens?
Aliens, no. I do appreciate how alien they look, though.
Are
I
you
don't know
familiar
where
with
I
it?
stand on the alien thing.
Are you familiar with the theory or hypothesis or whatever it is that they are aliens? Like
I'm
they're just
familiar as far as I know it exists, but I have
okay.
yet to go down that rabbit hole myself. Is up my alley as it
Apparently,
sounds.
apparently they're so genetically different from everything else on Earth that like they kind of have to be. I don't know.
Hmm.
That that's the long and short of my knowledge of it too. So,
Nothing else on Earth that's been discovered.
oh, true. Yeah, I guess that. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah,
Ugh,
especially when their native habitat is like unknown area of our planet.
yeah, I guess. Do you eat seafood?
I do. Yeah.
Have you ever
I've
eaten?
tried it. Octopus,
Yeah.
maybe.
All right.
I don't know.
I
I'll always get something interesting sounding whenever I'm at like a sushi place, so I probably have.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I'm not.
So I
Yeah.
do the same thing. I have had octopus sushi and squid sushi.
Ooh.
Octopus is actually better. It's like less chewy somehow. Um, Yeah, that's kind of a rabbit hole. Why did Drew even tell us to talk about sharks? This is insane.
Because Drew and I talk about sharks.
Okay, great. Well, tell me something else about sharks. What's something about their evolution that is uh that's so cool? I don't know anything
Well, they're
about
really
sharks.
so they're super
I've never even
genetically
watched
diverse.
like Shark Week on Discovery. I don't know anything about them.
Yeah, I mean, so they're super genetically diverse, which is definitely one of the more interesting things about them. There are like thousands upon thousands of species, probably some that are still undiscovered. And I think it's something like a third of them have close ties to the megalodon, which is like the ancient giant shark. It's basically just a big great white. There's like currently a debate out there. This is what I've been most closely following about whether or not the megalodon still exists somewhere and is hiding. I'm pretty vehemently on the side that it's not, because I don't think blue whales would be thriving in the same way that they are if it were still around. But there's another shark tidbit.
You've put way more thought into that because when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, of course they still exist. But yeah, you're right. I mean, how could an animal as big as the blue whale like have evolved to be that big if they were predators?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. What? So you are like super into punk and metal and
Yeah.
emo for some reason. What is the deal with libertarians and those kind of more hardcore genres of music? Why do you
Yeah.
think so
So
many libertarians are into it?
I've got a few theories. I think with the metal thing, and there's specifically a lot of liberty-minded people that are very into progressive metal and gent, and mathcore, technical death metal, all that super fun mathematical stuff. So my theory is that it's because we're fucking nerds. At least that for the metal part. But no, I think there really is something to that, because to come to this line of thinking, it requires a certain bottom up mindset, and I think that that mindset tends to lead one to be very technical and very left brained. And I think that that overlap with metal is maybe where that lies. The punk,
Uh,
it comes from, I think, more of a place of just anti-authority. And the emo, I haven't noticed as much of a like liberty streak there, but I refuse to stop posting about it. So
yeah, no, emo is totally just like mainstream. Like my most
well, the
mindless friends are.
third wave emo is
Oh, okay. Well, get into that. So I saw Taking Back Sunday last week.
third
That's
wave.
pretty much okay. That's third wave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, what came before that then? Because
Yeah, so
Taking
that would
Back
have been
Sunday to me is like the sort of the emo. Like if you said, "Hey, name an emo group," that would probably, or I guess maybe I don't know, like the ones that did Admit It. Say anything.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I always
Okay.
forget about them.
Yeah, well, that's all I know. Like they scream, so I figured that was probably emo. I don't know the difference between like emo and alternative. I graduated from high school in 2001, so I'm old. So like after like that genre of music, whatever it was, but like then it was like pop punk, like Blink-182 and stuff like that.
I love
Um,
Blink.
yeah, so I mean, so do I. They're fine. I don't know any of like the evolution after that though. So when did emo start? And I'm
Yeah.
not like asking you to get into like a history lesson if you don't know it, but I'd like to know kind of what emo is.
No,
How do you
you
even
asked me about
identify
one
it?
of my favorite things. Like you're probably gonna have to cut me off at a certain point.
Oh, good. All right, great. Because we got 90 minutes to kill. Let's do it.
So basically, the origins of emo are considered to be like the late 80s post-hardcore scene, mainly in the Washington, D.C. area. And Fugazi is the band that's credited as being like one of the first ones to popularize it within that area. And then it spread to the Midwest, and where Midwest emo comes in is really the second wave. So the second wave has more post-hardcore stuff, more stuff that's considered pure screamo, and more of like indie math rock. And that kind of got absorbed into Midwest emo. So when you hear like the twinkly guitars and the different like mixed meter time signature stuff going on, that's all going to be like your American football, your Sunny Day Real Estate, your Captain Jazz, and that is the second wave. So that's my personal
I've
favorite
never
is
heard
second
of
and
any of
fourth
them.
wave. Okay, no, fair enough. But yeah,
That's great.
that's where emo
Okay.
really came from. So the third wave, that's when pop punk gets a little bit more involved rather than being its own thing. That's your mall emo, some people call it. That's your, radio emo. And Taking Back Sunday was definitely one of the early adopters of that. One of the bands that really bridges the gap though between second and third wave, that's Jimmy Eat World, is definitely one of the big ones
Oh,
there.
I like
Bleed
them.
American was a like really turning point record for the transition from second to third wave. I love them too. But now we're in post emo, which is fourth and fifth wave, and really it's a lot of just calling back to the second Midwest emo than the third wave was ever.
Sweet.
I love that there's a chat. That's so fun.
Oh yeah, that's Quincy. Quincy says American Football Forever. Is that another emo group? or did
American
you listen?
Football is the group.
Okay,
Yeah, they're
great.
great. All country.
What distinguishes? So you've named all these different subgenres of music. Like I hear like heavily distorted guitars and screaming, and I think, oh, this is metal. I hear like someone with kind of a whiny voice, and I think, oh, this is emo. What is sort of the distinguishing factors of emo that makes that kind of, first of all, that will let me know, hey, this is an emo song. This is not, you know, punk or metal or whatever. But then also that kind of connects those different waves of emo.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different. You're gonna find a lot of exceptions to rules with emo because I mean, rock music in particular is just so like divided and subdivided into these little genres. So it definitely gets messy. But emo, I would say, is rock that is emotional and it tends to be lyrically driven. It tends to have like a heavier vocal component that doesn't need to be like traditionally good singing. But the different waves all kind of have their own things going on instrumentally in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, third wave is more traditional, like power chords, whereas like second wave emo is going to be a lot of open tunings and a lot of arpeggios. So it's kind of got a mind of its own.
Do you are you educated in music? You're using a lot of theory. Like I kind of know music, so I know what you're talking about
Mostly
most of the time.
informally. I am a music school dropout actually before I got into film production. But my main instrument was clarinet, and I didn't really get as into like following rock theory and all of that until actually after college. So I'm very YouTube educated.
That's pretty cool. I love hearing power chords coming out of clarinets. It's I'm just kidding. You don't play chords on clarinets. Um, so how did you first get into, like, that's not the kind of music that like your parents listen to in the car typically. Um, and I think that a lot of people, like, they just kind of listen to the stuff that kind of sounds like what their parents were listening to when they were kids. How did you get into this more hardcore music, or were your parents metalheads? And I'm just completely speaking out of turn.
It's actually kind of funny. They definitely influenced it, but in particular, oh my God, Drew. Was trying to focus. He said the virgin music theory versus the Chad. It sounds good. You can do both. Like I'm fully aware that a lot of my music is not like objectively good musically. That was a rabbit hole, sorry. But no, yeah, my parents definitely did play a role. In particular, my dad really liked 90s alternative rock, and I still to this day absolutely adore 90s alternative rock. But he really just listened to whatever rock was on the radio at the time. And one of those bands when I was younger was Blink 182, which is to this day my favorite band, which, as somebody who listens to actual punk and metal, I know is a little bit embarrassing, but I refuse to apologize for it. But yeah, my dad got me into Blink and drove me to my first Blink show and was a huge part of that. My mom exposed me to some metal. She was very into like thrash bands in particular, but she also really liked like hair metal. But she did like Pantera a lot, which is to this day one of my favorite bands. So they did influence me some, but really it was the people I was around in college, I think, played a big role in developing my music taste because I went to school with for there was a big music technology program at my school. So I was just exposed to all of these musicians with audio knowledge. And that was what we shared, was the audio knowledge, even though our musicianship was different. I was a clarinetist. But just being exposed to all these people and their little garage bands was huge in developing my taste. And there was a lot of Midwest emo involved. And I've just kind of gone from there, gone to as many shows as I can. And I think show openers are a great way to discover new music. I mean, if you like the headliner, you're probably going to like the opening bands. That's definitely a way to develop your taste, but just kind of exploded from there.
Well, what brought me to the Taking Back Sunday show, actually, they were opening for Blink. No, not Blink.
Third Eye
Third Eye
Blind.
Blind. Third Eye
Yeah, I thought
Blind.
they were on
Yeah,
tour with them.
yeah, they are. So Third Eye Blind was like one of my favorite bands in high school. I had, all of their CDs and stuff. So I guess that does kind of bridge the gap. Although, I see the connection between them. Although it almost feels like a tour of convenience. Like, we're gonna pull in young people with youngish people. Like the friend who invited me actually was going to see Taking Back Sunday, and I think he's 30. So like,
Yeah.
they're not pulling in the teenager set, but maybe their parents.
There you go. Yeah, it's funny. As soon as you said that, I was like, man, that is a show I could take my dad to, and it would be really fun.
Yeah, totally. And it was fun too. It was an outdoor concert. We didn't get eaten up by bugs because they sprayed. So like, it was great. And actually the like opening band, like the opening for the opener, whose name I can't remember, but they were really good. That's usually the group that I enjoy the most, is like the ones who are going to be hanging out at the bar, like while the headliners are playing.
Yeah, especially if they bring in local bands on a per city
Mhm.
basis, that's always fun because it's, you know, you got to support local music where you can. Decentralizing all of this is definitely a key path to making it anti-authority again.
Yeah, totally. Do you think that in the music sort of I like obviously the mainline acts are really really just sort of pushing whatever the narrative is. Is there still that anti-authority sort of stream in the like underground scene, or where is that now in the art community?
Yeah, so I mean, it really depends on where you live. So I'm based in Austin. There's plenty of bands here that have that anti-authority streak, and I would argue that even like the very communist punk scenes are they think anti-authority, which is a good thing at the end of the day. It's just sort of this misconception of what freedom is and misdefining of terms, and all of this like almost I hate to use the word misinformation because it's become such a trope, but it really is. It's just misinformed people who are pursuing freedom in the way that they think freedom can be achieved. So I think that the anti-authority is still there. I think it's really just about economic education.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. And even in the economic stuff, like we're seeing a lot of overlap. Libertarians are finally kind of coming around to the idea that these corporations aren't like just a private company, bro.
Yes.
Like even to the point where libertarian parties are removing the word corporation from their platforms, and like even here in Minnesota, like our LP has straight up passed a platform plank saying that like any organization that's like aligned with the government is aligned with the government, and you know, not private.
Hmm.
So do you see this kind of convergence going farther? Do you think that there will be some sort of I hate to use the word bottom unity, but like bottom unity?
I mean, honestly, I don't think that's a bad idea. Like, it's, I don't know. I don't want to go down a theory rabbit hole, but it's like that thing that everyone always talks about. If we lived in Ancapistan, there's nothing that is preventing them from buying farmland somewhere and that being the last capitalist transaction they ever have. They can go do whatever the hell they want.
Mhm.
I do think unity is a good thing. And I think it's good messaging wise. And I think it's just good for people as people. Like I this whole like I can't be friends with somebody who disagrees with me, I think stems from a lack of a unity mindset in a lot of ways. I think this assumption that anybody who disagrees with you wants you dead is definitely not good for anybody's mental health. So even on an individual basis, I think it's a good thing, and I think that the declining mental health of people who are awake to just the absolute monstrosity of the government and the world and the messaging and the narrative, that's not helping any of us fight for what we know is right. So yeah, absolutely, it's a good thing.
Um, Eric Weinstein has a video. It's a couple of years old, but it's talking about arch nemesis and how like Moriarty is the perfect arch nemesis for Sherlock because it's like how Sherlock Holmes has met his match. It used to be that, and the difference between like an enemy and an arch nemesis is that if you don't win, then your enemy wins is a bad thing. But if you don't win, then you want your arch nemesis to win because your arch nemesis is really the person or the team or whatever that has that has bested you. Like it's a fair
Hmm.
fight. It, I think probably prior to the mid '90s and the Republican takeover of Congress, that's kind of how the political wings saw each other. You know, the Democrats and Republicans would, you know, they were rivals on the floor of Congress, but they would go out for drinks afterwards. And I think after that there was kind of a slow decline that we're seeing sort of the bottom of right now in like respect for your opponents, your political opponents, and obviously that has kind of come out in our circles as well, in like libertarian and anarchist circles and
Yeah.
stuff. Do you think that there's a remedy for that where we no longer see each other as enemies but more as opponents, and you know, as long as we have a fair fight, the best team should win?
Yeah, decentralization. Even in your everyday life. There's this fantastic book, The Revolt of the Public by Martin Gurry, if you're familiar. He's a former CIA analyst, and he wrote this book basically about all of these different revolts that have happened. He goes back to, Egypt, and he goes back to, uh, what was the name of the Wall Street protest?
Occupy.
Occupy. Occupy. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I am not a morning person. I'm doing my best. But no, and he goes through Occupy, and he goes through all these different protest movements, though the Yellow Jackets in France, and just basically how they've informed each other, how decentralized they are, and how online they are. But about how the outrage that they're feeling is really a product of the like mass amount of information that we're taking in on a day-to-day basis. So we care about these issues that don't actually affect our day-to-day as much as we think they do. So instead of being pissed off about some election, like all the way around the world, that does not affect your day to day in any way, you could get involved in your community. You could get involved in your family. You can get involved with your friends. You can find other things to care about that aren't so big and that you really have such little control over. You can start with the things that you do control. And I think that that would definitely be for the betterment of both unity and, like I said earlier, just individual mental health.
Mm-hmm. And sort of the collective mental health as well. So how do you do that? How do you like encourage decentralization in like the sphere that you influence?
Yeah, well, for starters, I produce a YouTube channel that encourages active fatherhood. That's definitely a big one. But I mean, just with friends, encouraging them to unplug, reminding myself to unplug, making sure that when I am talking about national issues and when I'm talking about politics, I mean, you guys have seen my Twitter, you know that I do that, but I mean, just being funny about it rather than taking it all that seriously is definitely a helpful antidote for me. It's touching grass.
Yeah, that's the best. So I had never really heard touch grass until this year, I think. And maybe that's when it became like a vogue thing. I don't really know. It could have been around since the 80s, like emo, which I was really surprised to hear.
Late 80s.
Late 80s. Okay. Anyway, in any case, yeah, it really like touching grass, like literally does impact your psyche. Like if I'm feeling stressed or like overwhelmed at work, I go out and work in the garden. Like there's something about like coming into contact, and I don't wear gloves. There's something about coming into contact with soil and green stuff that like really does kind of calm the mind. And I from what I understand, that is sort of a natural occurrence. Like we're bred genetically to react to contact with nature that way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not just like a metaphorical dude, you need to go touch grass for a minute. Like it's really like really go outside like and actually do that. You can see behind me, like I've got my little mini herb garden
Oh,
growing,
there you
and also
go.
some aloe vera because it's prickly and I like prickly stuff. Do you think there's a difference between freedom and liberty?
Hmm, that is a great question that I actually have not really thought about. I mean, I
Not to
want
get
to say
bogged
no.
down in
No,
theory.
I want to say no solely because I tend to use them interchangeably, and I would hate to have to change the way I talk. But I mean, I guess liberty is maybe more in the inherent rights sense, is maybe how I tend to think of it a little bit more. Like
All right.
I was born with this liberty to exist. I got this liberty from nature. I don't need a piece of paper to tell me I have this liberty. I think that's maybe where I more mentally kind of silo that. Whereas freedom, I almost think of more in like the literal policy sense,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
almost seems counterintuitive now that I'm saying it out loud. I feel like maybe other people think of it the other way around, but we all tend to use them interchangeably. So I don't know how distinct it
Yeah.
needs to be.
I think for me, and I've been thinking about this the last couple of days. That's why I asked. But for me, I think freedom is more of a mindset. Like you can be free in a
Hmm.
tyrannical society, like black markets and things like that are freer than even like legitimate markets in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Whereas liberty is more of a external, like political or cultural thing.
Hmm.
Um,
It's kind of funny. What would be a great word for that, had if it didn't already have another meaning that's been co-opted, would be woke.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the thing is, woke, like from what I understand, woke was red pilled prior to it being woke. Uh,
Yeah.
so you know, the words they keep changing definitions. Do you think that words changing definitions like that is intentional? Do you think that people like purposely co-opt words that like liberal, for instance, is sort of the classic example of you know, a word that is continuously changed forever. Like it started out as like, you know, the sort of the 18th century equivalent of libertarian, and then it became what we now call progressive. And when
Hmm.
progressives use the word liberal now, they're talking about people like Hillary Clinton, whereas we would not consider Hillary Clinton liberal, I don't think. Although I don't know, like it's
Yeah.
just such a weird word. Anyway, do you think that that's intentional? Are you sort of an Orwellian in that sense?
I'm not. I think that at the very least, like the early changes like that were not necessarily intentional. But when words change today, I absolutely think there's got to be some intentionality there. Because I mean,
Yeah.
for instance, anarchist. I mean, we've kind of co-opted that in a way, right? Because anarcho-capitalism as an idea did not exist when anarchism was first talked about. It meant communist, no government communist, which we know that that's an oxymoron. But you know,
Yeah. I noticed on your Instagram that you did some like street. I don't know if it was campaigning or marching or what, but you were hanging out with the Joe Jorgensen poster.
that's right.
Are
Yeah.
so are you like an LP person, or are
No.
you more of the like outside the political sphere?
I exist more outside the political sphere. I've had my like goings on with the LP. I actually was the PR director for LP Texas for a very short while when I first moved here. But it's my involvement with the LP. I mean, that I did when I first moved here as a way to kind of network and help with something in the process of doing that. New city, meeting like-minded people is not easy.
Mhm.
But otherwise, all of my goings on with the LP have just been to support friends who are involved or just for fun. I'm very apolitical.
That's cool. Have you done anything with the Austin ANCAPs?
That's like my main social group. I love those guys.
Is it really? Oh my god, I love those people. We'll probably meet next time I'm in Austin.
Oh my
I've
gosh,
made
yeah,
it.
that'd be great.
Yeah, I've
We
made it.
probably
A,
have
I
a
made
ton
it
of
a
mutual friends.
Yeah, I made it a point to go hang out with those guys. We like I went to karaoke on my own last time I was in Austin because it was
Oh,
like
the,
the
the
week after.
karaoke within this group is like a religious activity.
I know it is for me too. I love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And like I learned as I was at karaoke, like I put it on my Snapchat story or something like that, and someone was like, "Hey, we just did karaoke like last week. You should join us next time you're in town." So I have like an open invitation, or if that wasn't an open invitation, I'm treating it like one because
We love growing the group and letting like new people in. So yes, it probably was. And I can imagine one of the few people who probably said it. And yes, absolutely it is.
that's cool. Yeah. So what? Yeah. What is the when I think of Austin, I think of like Portland Junior. But my understanding is that it's really not like that. And
Yeah, that's a huge misconception. I mean,
yeah,
we have
what's it like?
we have a specifically anarcho-capitalist group that's got like 30 people that regularly go to things, and we had a 4th of July party and that had like 70 people show up. So it's definitely not this little Portland-esque hellscape that people think it is. It may have been at some point, but in general, like the progressivism that people perceive in Austin is really just hippies that are very go with the flow and tend to not super care if you don't agree with them. So that's kind of where that I think conception comes from. But there's also a lot of more like cinnery, left, annoying type people. I can't think of a better word. Shit libs. We're getting a lot of shit libs lately. I think that's coming in with a lot of the employers that are coming in following the tech boom. And a
Mhm.
lot of the more administrative type people at tech companies. That's my best guess as to why that's been happening more in the last couple of years. But no, Austin is definitely a lot more diverse in thought than your Portlands or your Seattles.
Cool. How do you feel about Elon Musk? Well, I guess that's a really broad term or broad question. I was going to ask, how do you feel about Elon Musk moving to Austin? But just really, how do you feel about Elon Musk? What's his role in the world and in your psyche?
Oh man, Elon. I've got mixed feelings about him. I think he's a bullshitter, and I appreciate that he's a bullshitter. But I do love that he is part of the elite, but doesn't act like it. I think that I feel in a way like he's on our side a little bit more than the other elites. I mean, he posts memes, he talks like us, and I know that there's probably some sort of facade going on there. But like, look, if it's a funny meme, I'm gonna laugh. I don't really care all that much. I do like that he's moving to Austin, though. He's bringing in jobs. The factory he's opening is going to completely change the east side of Austin in particular for the better. I can't hate the guy either. I mean, space exploration, I think, is a noble pursuit. We don't know what's out there. And the idea of doing that privately, I think, is a win for liberty. So,
There might still be megalodons in space.
yes, that's where they went.
Yeah.
They
Well,
are on the secret ocean at like the core of Mars.
yeah, totally. He's gonna like find a spaceship full of octopus and megalodons. Um, let's talk about No System. So this is we mentioned it earlier. You're wearing a No System T-shirt. I would be if mine weren't in the laundry. Do you know much about the founding of it and sort of like what the inspiration behind the reason that so if you go to like Top Lobster or any of the other like really cool like libertarian leaning clothing manufacturers and like print on demand people, it's going to be all libertarian stuff. It's, you know, pictures of Murray Rothbard and quotes and things like that. When I go to the Gnosis website, which is nosisnos.com, and I'm going to put a link to it along with the discount code in the description. Some of it is like there, you know, there's Milton Friedman t-shirts and Adam Smith t-shirts and Mises t-shirts and all kinds of that, you know, the stuff you'd expect to see at a libertarian or anarchist website. But there's also like just kind of crazy looking, like there's a cat with a giant knife, for instance. And you know, stickers that say like Johnny Depp is innocent and that sort of thing. What's sort of the driving force behind it?
Yeah, so it's actually a really, really cute origin story for No System. So my friend Brian, who I mentioned before, the founder, he's like the key designer. He's really the brain behind the operation. He is very into punk culture and counterculture, as is his wife Angela. And basically, they started it with keeping in mind their two daughters. So Brian's whole idea was, you know, like what are they going to want to wear when they get older? Which is a super cute idea. I mean, they're raised by these two like classic art school punks. Like, what are they going to want to wear? And that was kind of the idea behind it. So
Oh,
really, it's a
nice.
variety of things, right? Like it's like the cat stuff. It's the message I see in that kind of apparel is don't take shit so seriously, which
Mhm.
is a great message. But
Yeah, there's one cat that's given a double fingers up, and I have a pair of socks with that on it. And
yeah,
I'm wondering if that was a design that was just sort of pilfered, or
it
if they used
happens.
to.
It yeah, that's
Yeah. Oh
always
yeah.
going to
Oh
be an
yeah. Totally. Yeah.
inevitability.
No, I'm not like claiming intellectual property theft or anything like that. I also
Well,
love
it's
that the
not
kids
real, so
selection is. I love that the kids selection is not like, um, you know, baby and cap or just whatever. Like trying to wedge kids into political theories. I guess it's more just fun. Stuff like there's junior hodler or hodler, however you want to pronounce it,
mhm.
and like question everything, but nothing overtly political. Do you think? I mean, do you think that teaching kids political values or just even politics is that something that that parents should do, or should they be more like less rigid with what they teach their kids?
Okay, so getting into the parenthood stuff, I would just like to give a quick disclaimer that, you know, these are my opinions. This
Yeah,
is not me representing my employer because we do have a parenting related channel. So I just wanted to put that
right.
out there real quick. I'm of the opinion that civics is important. Civics is important, history is important, and there's going to be a certain overlap with politics that is inevitable. But like, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a lot of YouTube channels that are like, or YouTube videos that are sort of man on the street ask, and they will go through and like ask teenagers and young adults like what are the three branches of government and they don't know, which I think is horrifying and definitely a stain on the public school system. So I mean, I'm of the mindset that civics is definitely important. I don't have any kids of my own, but when or if I do, I definitely would want to instill civics knowledge. Are you trying to tell me how to raise my kids? No, Drew.
Drew, I am going to tell you how to raise your kids. Um, do you do you personally have like a favorite education model? Um, like
Yeah.
there's so many in our circles
So
that
I would
you know
like,
I'm.
yeah. I think bottom up is the way to go, so that kids learn leadership skills. So I've heard a lot about. We posted a ton about this on Dad Saves America. There are definitely
Oh,
episodes for
nice.
more information on this that you guys should definitely check out. But my boss, who hosts our show, John Papola, our CEO, also wonderful human being. He sends his son to Acton Academy, and every time he talks about it, it just sounds like this like absolutely amazing like wonderland for developing minds. But basically, it's a completely bottom up system. So the kids really like run the school. They decide how their program works. They decide what they study. And like, there's only 3 adults, I think, on the campus, which has like hundreds of kids. It's a really, really cool model. And like, yeah, anybody listening that's got kids that want them to be, you know, leaders and wants them to, you know, step up and learn how to like be self sufficient, I definitely would recommend looking into it. We
Holy
have some
shit.
upcoming episodes with the founder, though, Laura Sandifer. So that'll be going up on the channel here soon. She's a fantastic person that we had on the show. She speaks to the school really well. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Nice. Are Acton Academies, is that like a chain like Sudbury is? Or is there
Yeah,
only
so
one?
it kind of is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's actually has like a lot of other similarities to Sudbury. But yeah, so basically like parents can start their own campuses and start their own schools.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
looking at their locations. There's a ton of them. They're like in Malaysia and Tegucigalpa and all the states. It looks like. Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to. So I've got two goddaughters. I don't have kids of my own, and probably won't. But I'm pretty active in meddling in the lives of my goddaughters. Actually, one of them is Lutheran, and at her baptism, the minister, like, part of my baptismal vows was to meddle in her life. Uh, so,
That's
so
cute.
yeah, I know. So I'm sort of duty bound to tell them not to send their kid to public school, which the wife is a little bit more receptive to that than the husband. So
Hmm.
we'll see. I mean, she's an infant, so
Yeah.
I've got time,
Yeah.
I guess.
No, I mean, at the risk of oversharing, I'm in a similar boat. I don't particularly see myself like ever having kids, but I'm going to be the coolest aunt ever when my little brother does. So that's the plan. Make
Yeah,
little freedom-minded nieces and nephews.
actually, my little sister is like set to give birth to her second, like
Oh,
probably
congrats.
probably today, like maybe today. I don't know. I mean, she's so close right now that she just posted on Facebook, like, hey moms, how do I induce labor so that I don't have to, be medically induced? She's I think past her due date at this point.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Well, good for her.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, she's not like libertarian, but she's an entrepreneur, and
That's awesome.
she and her husband own a restaurant actually in Rockwall, Texas. So it's kind of far from you, but if you're ever up there, um, hit them up.
Well, do.
Anyway, yeah. So we're making babies around here. Some of us are more like active in the raising of them. Do you think what do you think of the like extended family? Right now, I've heard some people in sort of the libertarian or post-libertarian sphere saying that the right doesn't go far enough because the right is all about the nuclear family, but in reality it's the extended family that like raises the kids historically or traditionally.
Hmm.
Do you agree with that? Do you think that there's a place for sort of the it takes a village approach of like not even just relatives but everybody, or is it more the nuclear family that's sort of the hub, and what follows from that is just sort of incidental?
It's an interesting question. We did have a guest on Dad Saves America also that spoke to this quite a bit. Michael
Wow.
Strong, who's an education entrepreneur. But he talks a lot about, so his wife is from Senegal, and he talks a lot about his experiences being in Senegal with her, where basically like kids just kind of ran out and were very self-sufficient. Then they came back to this like larger unit where the whole village really was involved. So it was safe for them to go out and do tasks on their own, which I would listen to that and think about all of the research that's been done. Like, if you've read The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff, it's a fantastic book. Anybody who listen to this, please read it. I think it explains
Mhm.
so much about why my generation is so fucked up. But it's a great read. And basically, it's about how there's all of these trends in overparenting that cropped up about the same time that my generation's I'm considered in by this book. I know Drew's going to argue with me about this in the chat. I was born in 96 and I'm considered the first year of Gen Z according to this book. Some people vary on what year they say it starts,
Yeah.
but as soon as my generation started getting to college age, that's when the demand for safe spaces started. That's when the demand for trigger warnings started. That's when this idea that words or violence really became super prevalent in these places that are supposed to be these pillars of intellectual diversity. So if you look at where that adds up years wise, one could say, oh, overparenting, lack of self-sufficiency being learned early on, probably the cause of all of this bullshit later in life and all of this like immaturity in people that are supposed to be young adults that can function. Um, one could look at those two different things and say, maybe having all of those people around, having that community involved in the child's upbringing, making it safe for them to go do things on their own would be a huge way to repel that kind of, upbringing that causes fragility, really. That would be my
Yeah,
take.
I think that all of that started on 9/11. So basically, kids that were raised sort of in right around 2001, probably are the ones that have been coddled. And the reason for it is it's really weird because it comes from conservatives like Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney and their See Something, Say Something, where everything was expected to be safe, everything was expected to be dangerous, and like everyone was expected to snitch on everybody. Um, so that built a culture of fear and victimhood and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And the big thing back then was 9/11 changed everything. Like you just heard that all over the news, and that was the big kind of talking point or heuristic or something like that. 9/11 changed everything, and now we've got COVID that has changed everything again. Do you think that the kids that are being raised like now 20 years later are going to be different and somehow from the coddled kids? And if so, what do you think that's going to look like?
Yeah, so I actually don't remember 9/11. I was too
No,
young,
of course
but I
not.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah. But my older friends, it's funny, you know, when COVID first hit and the economy shut down, a lot of my friends are like, I mean, you've met the Austin cats. A lot of my friends are like 30s, 40s. But I was texting them and I was like, is this what 9/11 felt like for you guys? Do you remember that? Because I was scared, right? You know, everything's shutting down. Nobody knew what was going to happen yet. I mean, even if it's in its early days, I'm not, as a person who's very anti-lockdown personally, I'm not ashamed to say that I was scared of COVID at first because so little was known. But I am, yeah, definitely very concerned about how these kids are going to come up. I definitely think it's the safetyism and it's that everything can hurt you and everything needs to be perfectly safe. I definitely think all of that's a problem, but I'm also really concerned about speech delays. I mean, kids learn so much from reading lips
Mm-hmm.
and like how they speak. And speaking is such a major part of how we learn to think and how our brain develops in general. And that, I can do anything, I can learn to do anything is mainly a result of neuroplasticity. And, speech delays usually mean less neuroplasticity later in life from what I've read. So I think it's absolutely concerning.
Yeah. I do like to hope that, I mean, nobody anymore really believes that lockdowns helped. There's still people that are kind of clinging to masks, but they're very few and far between. At least here in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis is a super progressive city, so I would imagine that in less progressive areas, it's even less widespread. So I'm kind of hoping that more and more parents and by extension kids are getting sort of woken up. I am hesitant to use red pilled because I hate all the pills. But are
There's too
getting
many.
are I know there's way too many. In fact, there's 2 orange pills. I had no idea. We were at a block party the other day, and our neighbor was like, "Oh, I got orange pilled," and I was like, "Oh, you're into Bitcoin? That's awesome." He was like, "No, no, no. Apparently, there's an urbanism movement that's like super
Oh.
anti-car. They're anti-car
Oh
and like
God, no,
pro
I've heard
like
about this.
yeah. So they're orange pilled because of like the color of the vests that they wear, because they ride their bikes everywhere. So yeah, apparently there's 2 orange pills. I am clear pilled, Drew. Also, so Drew's in the chat, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to acknowledge him again. He says that Jessi is a frumer, which is a fraudulent zoomer. I am on Team Drew on this, I think. So
Yeah,
for me,
96 sounds a little early.
yeah, for me, the generations start on the year that ends in 0. So like 80 to
Okay.
99 would be millennial, which is good because it puts me as a millennial, because I don't want to be Gen X because it makes me feel old. Because I was born in 82, which some metrics have me as Gen X there. What were we talking
Yeah,
about?
so we're both on the cusp though.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the
And
thing though, it's not
actually,
hard and fast. And so much of like generational research turns out to be kind of bunk science, right? But I do think that they're helpful for some research things. Like, I mean, saying here is a general parenting trend around this era. Here is a general result when these people were reaching young adulthood. I think that that's valuable. So putting names on it doesn't hurt.
yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, you just have to like it's cultural. Like you have to look at the major events that take place around the time that kids are being coming of age and that sort of thing. And you can kind of get a tell for what their personality is.
Yeah.
Not that obviously personality is at least half like genetic too. What was I talking about? So generations, yeah. There's like a general trend in the generations based on sort of the cyclical nature of culture and history. I have completely brain farted, and I don't remember what we were talking about before. So the coddling of the American mind, parenting, schools, Acton Academy. Yeah. So what else? What are some other things that are going on Dad Saves America?
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of good stuff. It's kind of funny. I'm racking my brain right now to figure out what's currently published because I'm not at liberty to give anything away. It's
Oh,
upcoming.
okay. Well, the most
There
recent
was
video
one
is
great
Warren.
thing. Oh, yep.
Yeah. Well, the most recent video is Warren Farrell. Why dads need their sons,
Warren is
and then
such a gem.
yeah. What's his
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thesis? I've never heard of any of these people except for John
So
Mackey. So
Oh, yeah, John Mackey's also great. But
yeah.
no, so Warren has this amazing book. I'm always going to recommend a book whenever you mention on these episodes. So I do a lot of our content prep. So
Mhm.
I've read all these people's books. I think they're all great. But Warren has a book called The Boy Crisis that I would call a must read
Oh
for
yeah,
anybody
I've
that
heard of
wants
that.
to better understand what is going on with men and boys in our country, and I mean around the world. There is like a huge crisis among men and boys that most people don't realize is there, which is hugely problematic because like no matter where you stand on the gender politics and the whatever, that's half the population that's suffering, and that needs to be acknowledged. So we've done all this work to free women, and I think that that is a great thing. But now men are dropping out of college at higher rates. They are entering the job market at lower rates. Grades are getting worse. They're dropping out of high school at higher rates. They make up a bigger portion of suicides, of incarcerations. There's all of these men's issues that seldom go noticed, and it's a huge problem. So Warren comes on and he really talks about like what to do, basically, as a man yourself and as a parent of a boy, what to do with all of this and how to avoid the major pitfalls. And his works on this stuff is phenomenal. He came up as like an early feminist activist at the National Organization for Women. He's done tons of work in what he calls just a broad gender liberation movement. So, something that can cover both genders. But, his later work is all on, freeing men. And he does fantastic work. Jessi Bennett, men's rights activist. No, 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 no. We're not going to say that.
um,
No, 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 no.
do you think that feminism went too far?
No. I think that there is a new movement that is doing a lot of things wrong. But I'm not letting them have the word feminism in my mind. I think there's a lot of hugely problematic things being done in the name of feminism, but I don't think it's feminism. I think any sort of gender liberation or alleged gender liberation that does not help everyone is no gender liberation at all, right? Because you're leaving a lot of people out of the conversation. So no.
Oh, that's
But
a good point.
I refuse to give them the name feminism.
That's a good point. Also, when you look at sort of race activism, um, you know, when Black Lives Matter came out, like all these white people were like, "Well, what about white lives? Don't they matter too?" I think all lives matter. And I mean, say what you want about all lives matter. I don't think it's necessarily like I don't think it's like a racist phrase or whatever. But I the analogy is made a lot of we have different foundations just for heart disease or just for pituitary cancer or whatever. I mean, don't all cancers matter, or don't all like diseases matter? Well, yeah, of course, but you kind of have to niche down. Do you think that intersectionality it muddies the water? Do you think that there is a need for these kind of specific movements, or do you think that um, all lives do matter? I guess. Like, where do you think the line is there, if
You
there is one?
are asking this in a very spicy way.
No,
Don't answer
well,
me, guys. No,
be be as be as
I'm half
spicy as you
kidding.
want.
No, I get it. So again, these are my personal opinions, but I think that intersectionality fails in one major way. That is if you lose points, let's say, to like having a need that needs to be addressed in some way, whether it be the government or more societal attention or more organizations doing things, whatever it may be. I think that if you lose points in that way, and then you therefore like lose the cultural focus, I think that that's problematic. Because for instance, black men have tons of statistical issues that should be addressed more in the culture, but they're not because they're still men. Like that's an argument that's frequently made, and here's a perfect example of that, and Warren talks about this in the episode. There's a gender policy council at the White House, and Warren has been trying with all these different organizations and all these different partners to get focus on men at this council for like decades. He's been trying to do this, but it is solely a council on women and girls. And he has been trying to do this for so long and is getting absolutely no response. And because of the lack of that at the White House, whether you think the government should be the solution or not, there's still no attention for Black men, even though they are statistically dealing with more issues than like a lot of the groups of women that are getting this attention from the government. So it's, failed a lot of groups in that way.
Do you think that the entry of trans people as sort of a thing that's acknowledged in the culture has made that even more complicated?
I'm not
Or
going to
do
comment
you
on
think,
that.
huh?
I
You're
prefer
not?
not to comment on that.
Oh, okay, cool. That's fine. Then I guess maybe I can ask this: what can be done for trans people that will make the whole of society better? Do you think that there's
Yeah.
any answers to that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have quite a few trans friends, and this is a conversation I've had many times. Is like, hey, just as an individual, like, is there anything I can do? Because you want to be good to your friends in any way that you
Yeah.
possibly can. And the answer I've consistently got is like, don't make a big deal out of it, which I think is a great answer, right? I mean, just treat people like people. And just here's the thing too. I'll say one little thing about this is I don't think it hurts anyone to just call people what they want to be called. If
Oh yeah.
somebody, yeah, no, it hurts nobody. And I think that being too extreme in either direction is problematic for both groups. And just treat people like people. That's my only input.
Mhm. Yeah, my partner has a trans friend who uh, was using they them pronouns, and recently, within the last couple of months, switched over to he him. And I'm kind of boomer when it comes to that kind of thing, so it's easier for me to conceptualize he him than they them. So I was happy about it. Although I don't think I slipped up too often with the they them stuff. I think I
No, and
probably
if you do,
I
you
must
just
have
say, "Oh
that.
my bad," move on.
Yeah,
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 that is it.
exactly.
It's
Uh,
kind of funny. The they thing, I had a little bit of trouble getting my head around it at first, honestly. But then I realized how often we just do it anyways, not even
mhm,
thinking about it. Like
yeah.
if somebody says to you, the mail person dropped this off for you, and you have a question about the delivery, you don't know the gender of the mail person, rather than assuming it. 9 times out of 10, you're going to say, "Oh, did they say X?
Yeah,
Oh, did they leave
totally.
it over there?" Like, yeah, we just do it so often naturally that I don't know. I think people make too big of a deal out of it personally.
When I was a freshman in high school, I had a study hall, and so I went to an all boys school. And so I went up to the front of the class because we weren't allowed to talk at all. We could raise our hand and approach the desk where the teacher, who was like babysitting us during the study hall, would sit. So I raised my hand. I went up to the front. I asked her if I could ask if anybody brought their biology book because I wanted to study for the test. And she said, "No, but you may ask if anyone has brought his biology book." And that really like put me off of using they as a singular pronoun forever,
Mm,
like up until maybe 3 years ago when I met my partner, and like he had lots of friends who use they them. So a lot of it is just conditioning. I even emailed that
yeah.
teacher. She's now in LA as like a theater manager or something like that. Went back to her true love of drama rather than being a pedantic English teacher. And I was, and now that she's like in Hollywood and is kind of exposed to all of this stuff. I mean, she's ancient. She's got to be in her 70s now, but she was like, yeah, that was a completely like foreign thing to me, and it took me forever to get used to it. So like, you we as people who use like the traditional pronouns, I guess, it's helpful if we can have a little bit of grace with sort of the evolution of language, which gets back to what you said earlier, where you don't think that it's necessarily intentional. um, do, this is like none of what we're talking about is like in my bullet list of questions, so I'm sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit and rambling, but
No, no, it's all good.
the way that language evolves
Yeah.
is politicized. Like, I mean, Orwell
Yes.
Orwell was right that it is politicized. How do we show grace to people who are utilizing sort of the neologisms in the language without also giving into the authoritarian tendencies that sometimes are like go along with that?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's just important to understand the difference between a policy opinion and a personal view, right? I think
Mhm.
that that's a huge issue within libertarian spaces in particular, right? We have this huge fracturing right now between those who are culturally progressive, not policy, and those who are not. And there seems to be this idea among those who are not that those who are want it to be mandated from, the powers that be, when that's just not the case. Um, but I really think that that's all it is just educating ourselves and those around us on the difference between a policy opinion and, a real opinion. Like, for instance, it's no, it's the same assumption is like when you say I love Taco Bell and someone says, "Oh, that's not real Mexican food," right? It's like that. It's useless. It's stupid. I I just wish people would give each other grace in that respect. When somebody says an opinion, don't assume that they want to enforce it with the boot of the state. I think that that assumption is really what's killing us within our
Mhm.
spaces. And I think that even outside of our spaces, that is a dangerous assumption. If you need clarification, just ask.
It is weird. There's kind of a in specifically in our spaces, there's a tension between like what it's only words. It was just a joke on one hand, and fuck no, I'm not going to call somebody they them. That's not even that, objectively he's a he. Like what how do we I don't want to say combat, but how do we like challenge that in our own spheres? I keep using the word sphere, but in our own like circles, which is also a sphere, I guess. But
Just continue to believe what you believe and do whatever those beliefs, push you to do, right? I mean, if you really can't handle it, just don't associate with people who do, you
mm,
know? If you
yeah.
really can't take changing up the way that you speak ever so slightly to make somebody more comfortable, just don't associate with them. Their life will be better for it. You'll be a little bit less of a dick in your day-to-day life. I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna, sit here and pretend to be an expert on pronouns and language, but I will
Mm.
say this, that my life is substantially better when I just call people what they want to be called and I just don't talk to people that are going to be dicks about it. It's that same decentralization, right? Like, I'm not going to get mad about how people are addressing each other in the culture. I'm just going to, in my own friend groups, just say what I want to say and associate with people who say things that, don't give me a tension headache. It's touching grass. The answer is always going to be
Yeah,
touching grass with
there it
me.
is. There it is again.
Yeah.
Maybe that's going to be the new theme of the show. Actually, touch grass. I really like that. I really like that. Just advice, and I've seen it work in my own life, and I don't even think about it. Like I need to. I need to make a more of a conscious effort, I think.
Well, it's funny too because
Um,
it's such a like online thing, right? And it sounds
yeah.
like I'm like making fun of these like internet whatever. Like, no, 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 because I also have a completely internet stained brain. I'm fully aware of that. But it's really just decentralization at the end of the day. Decentralize your own life, right?
Mhm.
Decentralization is key to solving so many of the issues that we talk about, and it is a key part of the movement. But we decentralize, rather than nation state individual, right? That's decentralization in a way. Blockchain is decentralization. You need to decentralize your own life too. That's, I mean, really what touch grass is to me.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Like I spend my entire life in this room, basically, like whether I'm doing my podcast or side stuff or just working, because this is also my office where I work from home. Um, this room gets really, really stifling, and it's kind of where I do all of my social interacting almost.
Mm,
I mean, obviously I've got real world friends, but we see each other maybe once a week. I've got my partner who's at work all day. We see each other at dinner, and then like after dinner. If we're not doing anything that night, then great, we're going to be just the two of us. But I mean, more often than not, we're either hanging out with friends or I'm coming back in here to work some more or whatever. Um, you're right. Like decentralizing your life also means diversifying what you're doing from day to day, what you're seeing. Because if I look around, like I see this office from 7 o'clock in the morning until sometimes 11 o'clock at night,
mhm.
stopping for meals. um
Yeah, and I mean too, like meeting more people is super key
mhm.
too to making your life the best it can be. Because if you want to associate with people who make you feel good and you're happy to be around, right, you have to go out and meet those people. So, and that kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, right? There's this fracturing, there's this assumption that person says X, it means they believe Y. It's like, no, go out, talk to people more, figure out what they're really about, and just surround yourself with people that make you happy.
Do you think that libertarianism is approaching the sort of religious status?
Oh God, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's funny because it maybe not religion, but I think there's a great religion analogy here that I'd like to make, and that's that So, you know, those atheists that are so into being an atheist that it becomes a religion? I think that
Mhm.
there are libertarians that are so into there being no government that being the best at being a libertarian becomes almost their state, right? It's, I have to do this. It's, this has to be my ideology. When really, at the end of the day, like all these different subgenres of libertarianism, we're all on the same team, right? You don't have to be the best one. You don't have to treat it like it's your preferred system of government. It is just the absence of that distinction is really important for A, how we treat each other within the movement, and B, just how we view ourselves within the movement. I think that there's a lot of just attempted intellectual superiority complexes going on as a result, and it's just not good for actually discussing ideas.
That superiority complex is a big thing.
Yeah,
Like even Spike Cohen, like who everybody like, there's literally not a libertarian who doesn't like Spike Cohen, but he even says like libertarians are known for being the smartest people in the room, and like I don't know if that's true. Like I hang out with a lot of libertarians, and you know, I mean, I'm smart-ish. You seem pretty smart, but I'm not like a big brain, you know, Murray Rothbard type. You
right.
know,
Yeah.
I can't make it through a Mises book. Like I've never read Human Action. I've tried to. Like, it just doesn't interest me.
I would
Um,
recommend Plan Chaos over Human Action personally, but that's
all right, cool. I'll check
yeah,
it out.
no, see, no, it's funny though, because I am more that type, right? I came in from the theory. I love the theory, but no, I am never going to think I'm the smartest person in the room. And it's, you know what? How smart either of us are is honestly kind of irrelevant, right? Because if you go into every room assuming you're the smartest person, you
Yeah.
are going to learn absolutely nothing. I don't care if I'm in a room with a bunch of people who have literally been IQ tested and it is like 10 points. Let's say I took one, they all took one. I know they're all like 20 points below me. I'm still going to convince myself I'm the dumbest person in that room because I want to
Mhm.
learn something. I think that's so important.
Well, I had deluded myself to believing that I was going to be the smartest person in every room that I walked into. It took working for a software company where like I am average at best, and when you get the engineers in the room, I'm just at the bottom of the totem pole. And these are the smartest people I've ever come into contact with, and lo and behold, I'm the only libertarian as far as I know. Like there is so much that we can learn from other people, and there are so many other people who are superior to us in intellectually, if not ideologically. And even ideologically, like I said earlier, I mean, we have libertarians have learned a lot from leftists in the last few years. It doesn't mean that necessarily leftists are reaching the same conclusions as we are. Um, and who knows why the hell so many socialists decided that it was, you know, better that Amazon take over all of commerce than um, you know, let your mom and pop, your, you know, the
Yeah.
store down the street stay open. But that is a hard learned lesson that we could have come to we could have come to those conclusions if we hadn't just rejected them as, you know, Marxist drivel. And you know, I mean, even Rothbard was writing about it back in the 60s and 70s. So we could have taken him at his earlier word, rather than just sort of towing the Ayn Rand line for whatever reason. Anyway, I'm babbling, but I want to make clear that like we can learn from everybody and we're not superior.
No, that's
um
so completely true. And even not just ideologically, right? Like messaging wise.
right, yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's something to be learned from every single person you come into contact with. But I mean, like, politically, like, yeah, I mean, they clearly are winning the messaging battle. Like, I mean, you can just look at the voting numbers, right, and see that. And like, yes, there's the history of the two-party system, and there's the all that, but it's like, okay, how do we go from point A to point B if we're talking party-specific stuff? And it's, you know, look at how they're messaging, look at how they're getting people, look at what people are interested in. Like, there's something to be learned from everyone.
Yeah. What do you think, from a messaging standpoint, what do you think that we need to do? Like Dan Smots, for instance, he gave a speech recently about propaganda and how like everything are you familiar with Dan and his work?
Mm-mm. No.
Okay, so Dan Smots, he makes these like just crazy good like short ads and just like
Oh,
other
cool.
videos. Uh,
I definitely should know.
oh yeah, you totally should. Like
Yeah.
I think he did like all of Spike Cohen's commercials when they were campaigning, that kind of
Oh,
thing.
those were solid. Okay. Cool, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Um, but he was talking about how like that's all propaganda and we need to learn how to do it. What and not, you know, not necessarily propaganda in the bad sense. It's just, you know, propagation of our message, but in a palatable, you know, not here, read this book sort of thing. What do you think that we need to learn in order to get our word out there? I'm thinking about especially Emergent Order and, you know, the music videos and things like that. Um, is there a way to do that without coming across as preachy?
Yeah, just be a part of the culture, really. I mean, there's like, so Keynes versus Hayek, for instance, it's just this fun educational video, right? It's not, it doesn't read like an ad. It doesn't read like an economics lesson, even though it is, right? It's just fun. And it was meant to be, and I think succeeded at this, a cultural phenomenon. And it went viral. I mean, if you look at that view count and think about the time at which it came out, obviously we're talking about a way different scale of audience. It was huge. It had earned media. John was on Fox Business talking about it. Like, it's about creating cultural moments like that, I think, in ways that are fun for people. I got so many people interested in economics. Like, if you look at like the response that John got to it, I mean, like, I've read some of these old emails he got. There were like kids that were like 7 and 8 years old doing the rap at school talent shows. Like, there's videos of this out there on the internet. It is adorable. But it's like, you know, if you're getting 7 and 8 year olds interested in economics, clearly like the cultural approach worked in that example. And I think that's really what it is. And no system is, you know, obviously aiming to do that too. It's about building communities around things and using culture as a means for doing that. So Dad Saves America is a perfect example too, because the goal there is to create a community. That's what it is even if it's online, like, we want people to be in touch with each other and with us about their issues, what they're going through, what they'd like to learn about. I mean, you can't build community without that community having a culture. And so I think that making your ideals into a culture is step one.
Do you think that there's something to be said for like separatism, building sort of alternative societies, or do you think that we are kind of stuck with what we've got, so we might as well try to influence it as much as we can?
I mean, I think that both are fine approaches, and it's almost a matter of personal preference, right? Think about your individual life. In which way are you personally going to be happy? It's that same thing. That's what you really can affect for sure. That's the one certain thing, is you can do what you want with your own life to make yourself happy. And, you know, if fighting the system and being more overt and trying to affect the powers that be, if that's like what brings you joy and you think that's going to work, go for it. If you want to go live in a homestead on 30 acres, I mean, fucking awesome. That was probably expensive, but good for you. It's, you know, I think it's really a personal preference thing. I don't have the answer on that one. So I would just say do what brings you joy.
Sweet. Yeah, last time I was in Austin, I was at an event at Buck Johnson's house, and you know, he had hundreds of people in his yard because he just bought like a 1 acre property.
Oh,
That's
that's
kind
right.
of.
Yeah, I think he and I chatted about that, not
Oh,
this
really?
4th of July party, but the year prior. Yeah, no, it was so funny running into him. I actually hadn't met him in person before. We'd interacted a little bit. And he was like, "Are you Jessi from Twitter?" And I turned around and it was this like big dude. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I am. Hi."
Oh, that's great. Was he at an AA event?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was,
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
it was at the fourth party like 2 years ago, I think,
Nice.
something like
Oh, I
that. But
see.
yeah,
Okay, cool. I
yeah,
wonder if
he comes and goes.
does he still hang out with the end caps? I know he's.
I mean, I haven't seen him in a while, but I also wasn't going to stuff for a little bit, so
Hmm,
yeah, I don't know. We cross paths on occasion. He's a
yeah,
really nice guy.
cool. Yeah, he's currently converting to Christian Orthodoxy, so I think that's
Oh,
probably
interesting.
his new. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a big trend right now. Like, uh, I
Hmm.
and we're kind of coming close on time, but basically what I've been seeing, and this kind of falls into what's called integral theory. Basically, sort of the dominant like ideology or dominant worldview or whatever, kind of oscillates between materialism and spiritualism,
Yes.
and it can take hundreds of years. But we right now are kind of coming to the close of a materialist age and into more of a spiritual age. And Christian Orthodoxy, for whatever reason, it and it might just be because it's such an old thing and it kind of bridges the gap between materialism and spiritualism, in a way that Western Christianity doesn't. Um, it has become like the religion that all these libertarians are converting to. Like if you hear someone is becoming a Christian, they're becoming Orthodox. They're not like becoming a mega church, evangelical or Catholic or
No,
anything like that.
yeah. No, that makes sense. I didn't know about the trend in the community specifically, but that's interesting. And no, I mean, like polls are showing right now that even though religion is not hugely popular right now, that I think it's like well over 75%. Don't quote me on that. I might be incorrect. Of people like people from Gen Z, like old, young
Mhm.
adults right now, consider themselves spiritual in some way. And I mean, you see
Yeah.
it everywhere, even if it's like the girls with the cute little crystals. It's
Yeah,
something
yeah, yeah.
though.
Well,
Yeah.
and I mean, if you look at how things are being covered, it's not like the objective truth behind something that is important. Um, Everything from like AOC saying, oh, we might not be factually right, but we're morally right, to trust the science, and what the science means is, what this high priest is saying, this week, and the science might change next week, and we'll ban you from YouTube if you don't follow the science as it is, currently being explained to you. All of that is kind of spiritual. It's a very moralistic sort of direction of being, um, and it also is sort of in our circles as well. Whether it's libertarians converting to orthodoxy, or libertarians picking their tribe based on your view on abortion or transgender or
Right.
whatever it is. Um, all of these are moralistic rather than like scientistic, I guess.
Hmm.
um and that's all to me a just evidence of a big huge cultural shift. um
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. And I mean, like this seeming like, I don't know, I think some people naturally do have, what's the expression, a God shaped hole in their heart, right?
mhm.
So I think for the people that need that in an era where, religion isn't hugely popular, or they might not have been raised in it or know how to approach it, like, yeah, they're going to fill that void with something. So I think that's all definitely evidence of that as well.
Yeah. Drew said YouTube bans suck. That's why I use Odyssey. Yeah, I also use Odyssey. Odyssey's chat function kind of sucks, so that's why I usually promote the YouTube first. But I do
Fix
definitely
the chat
recommend
function,
everybody.
Drew.
Yeah, Drew, fix it. Jeez.
Fix it. What the
Uh,
fuck?
well, and plus it doesn't seamlessly sync up with Restream, which is my streaming platform of choice. So anyway, all of
Fix
those
that too.
reasons is why I promote the YouTube. Oh, Drew's gonna be right back. He's gonna go fix it. uh, yeah, anyway, definitely, Odyssey is one of those sort of alternative societies, really, that's being kind of built up, in opposition to that's I mean, it to me. I asked you about this earlier, like what is it better to just sort of try to exist in the society that exists, or to build something of our own? And I definitely agree with you. I think that both and is the answer there. So I'm going to stick on YouTube. Yeah, I'm going to stick on YouTube for as long as I can. But if it does come to pass that more of my people are on Odyssey, then certainly I would rather be there, because I know that my people run Odyssey. And while Odyssey isn't like a libertarian thing, and Gab certainly isn't a libertarian thing, and MeWe isn't a libertarian thing per se, um, they are much more like, their values align more with mine, I guess.
Sure. No, it's a decentralization thing, which is key. It's
Yeah.
also a market based solution for a huge problem that our people happen to be facing. So, it is in that way.
Yeah, totally. And that, I mean, that's kind of, to me, the sort of the definition of libertarianism. Like, obviously we can say it's the nap, or it's private property, or it's self-ownership, or whatever, but in the end, it's just ultimate decentralization. Oh, it's thundering. Wow. Sorry if it starts getting loud. It's ultimately decentralization down, whether it's you know the federal government deferring to the states, or me deferring to you when we're dealing with matters that impact you, but not necessarily me.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of our ideals are contingent on bottom up systems of both thinking and like actually operating as a bottom up system, right? So it's like you have to decentralize to get down to the lowest level first, and that's how you build a bottom up system.
Yeah, absolutely. So no system. Why is it called that? Do you know the origin behind the name? Is it just that
Because there is
domain
no
existed?
system.
Okay.
Yeah. Simple
But what?
as.
But you were just talking about systems.
Yeah, sure, bottom up systems, but it's not a formal system. It's a lack of belief in the system.
Got it. Okay, cool. All right, awesome. Well, we're coming up on about 10 minutes before we finish. Why don't you well, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Any other projects that you've got going on, or questions that you wished I had asked?
Well, definitely everyone that's listening, subscribe to Dad Saves America in Emergent Order on YouTube. I absolutely love my employer. We make awesome stuff, so do that. But there is some really cool stuff happening on Dad Saves America right now. One thing I didn't mention is that we recently did some work with Troy Kotzer, who was the Best Supporting Actor Oscar winner this last year. And he did a great job in the film Coda. So definitely keep an eye out for those episodes. They're going to be super interesting. He's got this just phenomenal story about his father, and he just like really is like a pull yourself up by the bootstraps, hardworking, like against all odds kind of guy, and a major success story. So definitely check that out when it drops.
Nice. All right, cool. Do you wanna plug your Twitter or anything else?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter. It's at Jessi Nicole B, JESSI NICOLE B, Jessi Nicole B. Go to No System.
Yeah.
The discount code's going to be in the thing, right? I'm not
Yes,
good
absolutely.
at the promotional stuff.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so the
I just
URL
need
is
a chit chat.
no sis knows, and I'm not going to spell it on the air. Just click the link wherever you're listening to this, and then it looks like Jessi B _ Blackbird is the coupon code for 15% off your order. Like I said, I love No Sis. I have 2 t-shirts, probably gonna get more. They've got new collections coming out all the time, and it's not just t-shirts. There's posters and earrings and pins and stickers and posters, and I think I said
and
posters
leggings
twice.
that are super comfortable.
Leggings. All right, great. I'll make sure to get some leggings. Actually, I don't wear leggings, but I do wear jeans that have like a little bit of spandex woven into them.
Oh yeah, jeggings, right?
I guess I don't know, but I know that American Eagle sells them, and they sell them in my size, and they are the most comfortable things I've ever worn in my life.
I'll look into
So
that.
also plug American Eagle stretchy jeans. Other than that, I'm gonna link to a bunch of books and a bunch of different YouTube channels and things like that. Check out Emergent Order, and with that, I think why don't we go ahead and sign off? Thank you so much, Jessi.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was super